When we ask our clients what having a job at First Step means to them, not a single person that we have asked that question of says a paycheck. They always talk about things like hope and dignity and a chance to control my own life or a chance to reconnect with my family. So it really is all those intangibles that I think are the real difference maker. Like, obviously, paychecks are helpful. It helps provide food, shelter, put you on a path to economic stability. But it's really the intangibles that we're offering to people who are just completely shut out of the workforce, who get told no so many times, and we get to be the people that say yes, that I think is the real difference maker.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Well, we're here today with a new partner of 1-800-Flowers, one that's of the last couple of years. I'll tell the story and get to introduce you, Amelia Nickerson, in a second. I wrote about this in the Celebrations Pulse newsletter some time ago because we are so proud of our partnership we have with you, Amelia, and the team at First Step. But it all came about as I started the article in the newsletter. I said it all started with us sitting next to a stranger on a plane. And here I was flying back from California to Atlanta. And usually I sit on an aisle seat. This time I didn't make the reservation early enough. And I'm on a window seat. I think it was in 1A, and in 1B is a nice lady named Monica Block. Monica and I got to chatting, and she told me that she'd recently lost her husband and what a special guy he was. And she was concerned that she wouldn't be able to keep her husband's charitable effort that he started called First Step going, and told me a little bit about the charity. And when I got back to New York some days later, I mentioned it to our folks at Smile Farms about the work they were doing and how, just on the telling from Monica, how it sounded like you guys were doing really terrific work. And now we have you with us here today, Amelia Nickerson, who's the CEO of First Step. And I'd love to hear your story about how you got involved, and we'll try and shine a light on the great work you're doing and the partnership you convinced us to try that we're thrilled with. And I just think what you're doing is amazing. I think the organization's terrific. I think there can't be enough of you, and you can't go fast enough. And I think that'll become clear to our community as they get to know you. But let's get a little bit about you, Amelia. Where are you from?
Originally Savannah, Georgia, but I've been living here in Atlanta since about 2004.
Atlanta's the magnet city for all the young people in the Southeast, I gather.
It is. Jobs bring people to Atlanta.
Uh-huh. And more and more, and I just saw an article about this in a newspaper this week about here living in the New York area. When my kids were going to school, everyone went north in New England, and now I hear them all going south, and it's Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and University of South Carolina and what's that wonderful art school in Savannah?
Oh, SCAD. Yeah, Savannah College of Art and Design.
Oh, what a beautiful place that is. So you graduate, you move to Atlanta?
I did. I started my career at the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. I had plans to go into arts administration, but always seemed to find myself gravitating towards the development and fundraising side of things. So worked there at the Symphony for several years, did a project with the Woodruff Art Center here in town, kind of all between having 3 children who are now 16, 14, and 12. So there were some stops and starts in there. And then ultimately I was called in to do a special fundraising project. They were doing a film on a gentleman named Robert Shaw, who was the longtime conductor of the Atlanta Symphony. And as that project wrapped, I went and started working for a local consulting firm here in Atlanta called Cox Curry and Associates. And they've been around since the 50s. They've worked on every major capital campaign in town. They are well known kind of in the nonprofit sector as some of the best in fundraising. And that's where I met Greg Block. I was doing his grant writing. I was helping with his board. And he was if you met Monica and heard some of the Greg stories, you know a little bit about it, but he was a big idea guy. He was really trying to push the limit on what a nonprofit could achieve. And I got to know him right when he was going through his first initial growth phase here at First Step, and just fell in love and became very intrigued.
He died very young, I gather.
He did. He unfortunately passed away in August of 2020 after a long multi-year battle with cancer. But really, I think, ironically, kind of the cancer diagnosis, some of the First Step story, he started First Step in 2007. He was a young guy. He was 40 years old. He had had a personal mission to give back to his community in some way. And I think he was fairly agnostic originally about what he would give back to, but he just knew he wanted to do something in the community where he had been raising his family, which was here in Atlanta. And he talked to some city leaders at the time. He talked to our mayor, Mayor Franklin. He talked to the head of the Central Atlanta Progress, a guy named AJ Robinson, who still is on our board, and said, "Where do you need help? What can I do for the city?" And there was a big focus around homelessness at the time. And so Greg did what any businessman would do in that situation. He went out and did his research and due diligence to figure out what was missing. And the thing that was missing here in Atlanta, and quite frankly is still missing in so many places, is a focus on jobs and income. And he was a pretty practical guy. So he said, "Well, how do you ever sustain housing if you don't have a job?" So he wanted to find a way to hire as many people experiencing homelessness as possible. And that is how First Step was born.
Well, I've heard from Matt Miller, who works with you, and I've heard you in different interviews you've done talk about a job, and it sounds a lot like me when I'm talking about the jobs and the impact they have on the disabled community that we're focused on with Smile Farms here. And you use the same term I've come to believe is so true, which is jobs are a lot more than a paycheck.
Mm-hmm. They are. I mean, I think Greg started First Step with the idea that you need income to sustain housing. But I think the more we've done this work and the more lives that we've touched, when we ask our clients, and that's what we call the individuals we hire, they're our clients, we ask them what having a job at First Step means to them. And to a T, Jim, not a single person that we have asked that question of says a paycheck. They always talk about things like hope and dignity and a chance to control my own life or a chance to reconnect with my family. So it really is all those intangibles that I think are the real difference maker. Like, obviously, paychecks are helpful. It helps provide food, shelter, put you on a path to economic stability. But it's really the intangibles that we're offering to people who are just completely shut out of the workforce, who get told no so many times, and we get to be the people that say yes, that I think is the real difference maker.
In that conversation I enjoyed with Monica flying cross country that day, she put it to me in a way similar to, can you imagine yourself, you're living life close from a financial point of view, you're hurt on the job and you're disabled for a bit, so now you're out of work, and now your apartment rent is behind, and now all of a sudden you're evicted and you are homeless. If you're an individual, a single person, that's horrible. It's horrible times X when you also have a family to support. She painted the picture for me. How big is that first step when you're on the streets? You probably don't have a cell phone. You don't have a mailbox. You don't have an address. How do you fill out forms? How do you get a call back if someone does want to hire you? How do you get a shower? How do you get clean clothes? How do you get a comb to comb your hair to show up looking decent the first day and not smelling? And when she kept laying on all the realities of what that circumstance must be like, you can't help but empathize and say, how would I do that? How would I make that first step? And the whole idea of what you do, Amelia, at First Step with taking the idea of a staffing agency, and I know you bought some for-profit staffing agencies and put the not-for-profit wrap around that and combine it with social services, just makes all the sense in the world. Because if you could, and now you've proven it to us, because I'm so proud of the fact that last holiday season, we have a big distribution center, one of our newest in Atlanta, and frankly, Amelia, we've been having trouble up until we met you in staffing that properly and having the right culture and the right fit of people. But last year was our most successful year because we had 350 or so of your people, your clients, come to us, that you had job coaches on site, that you provided them with transportation, that you provide them with shoes and clothes and toiletries and hope. That the spirit in the building was electric. We had, I think I was told, a 94% on time and present attendance record, which was higher than the staff that we hired otherwise. And so it was just a hugely positive experience for us, and our management there and across the country, when they heard the story, was so proud of the fact that they had a positive influence on at least 350 people's lives. And maybe we were part of that helping hand to get up that first step. And we hope there have been some terrific steps after that. But your concept of combining a social services capability, logistics with a staffing agency is brilliant. And I wonder, did that model make itself apparent to Greg in the early days, or has it evolved?
It's definitely evolved over time. I think originally, staffing was an easy entry point for volume of jobs, is what Greg was looking for. How many people could he hire? And as you know, Jim, I mean, staffing in the US is just a tremendous business.
I heard you say that it's 270 billion industry in the US. I was
It
shocked at that.
is. It is. It is massive. So all we're doing is carving out a little tiny, tiny slice of that pie and reusing it for the people who are getting left out. So the business framework is there. And I love, love, love to hear your comments that our team performed well, that the folks who were showing up for work broke every stereotype that people have about this population, that they were motivated and excited and on time.
I was so happy to have a job, to have hope.
They're so motivated. I mean, we have a line outside of our door every day, and nobody is making them show up. These are not work requirement programs. They want to work. But as one of our staff members says, our chief mission officer, she always says, we call ourselves First Step, but we are not the first stop. Usually these individuals have been many, many places and been turned away and feel hopeless. So imagine, as you said, Jim, all those things people are facing, and then they can walk in a door and they sit down for an orientation, and we tell them that day that they have a job, that they don't have to go anywhere else. They don't have to do any other hurdles, break through any other barriers, that we're going to get them working. And like the change in their demeanor is instantaneous. So they are motivated, they're excited. And it really takes having great employer partners like you all so that they have a great environment to go work in, because that motivation just continues. And we've seen many, many people take the job at 1-800-Flowers, and then now they're motivated to go back to school or to get certified in a higher skilled certification so they can move into that next job and that next career. One of the gentlemen that was at 1-800-Flowers, he was in a recent video we did with you all, is now a welding apprentice and is moving into a really, really great job.
We'll attach that video in the notes here. It's just terrific. The team you had work on that, Amelia, it was out as well. Give the audience a sense of that and what's happened to him in his life.
Yes, so we talked about, we followed one of our clients, and First Up right now employs short of 8,000 people a year, but we selected one gentleman, a gentleman named Nick here in the Atlanta office, who unfortunately has spent quite a big portion of his life in prison. He was in prison for over 2 decades. He was feeling very disheartened coming out. He was facing homelessness and couch surfing, and had tried to apply for a number of jobs because he knew that he did not want to go back to the things that had sent him to prison the first time, but was getting really disheartened, and ultimately was connected with the First Step team and had just what we just talked about happen, right? He walked in, he needs a job, he fills out his paperwork, and then we say, we've got a job for you that starts tomorrow, and he was just over the moon. So he ended up working at 1-800-Flowers last season. It's a busy, busy place in the holiday season, Jim.
Thank goodness.
He was there. I know, it's great. He got promoted a few times while he was working with you all during the busy season, and I think that gave him the confidence and the stability to start thinking about what he wanted to do next. So Nick is now a welding apprentice and is working on that certification and is on his way to a really, really great job. But he's thriving and he's doing wonderful. So we were able to follow his story as a way to demonstrate what First Step does and why we do it, and hopefully get more employer partners and more cities interested in what we're doing.
Wow. I would imagine, Amelia, that your phone is ringing off the hook. I haven't heard of another program. You'll know and you'll tell us other programs that you like and respect that are dealing with this problem as well. But I don't know of another program that's dealing with this as effectively as you are.
There are some other similar-minded organizations in the world. We're kind of part of this ecosystem called alternative staffing. And there are other agencies that are doing similar work. Most of them are place-based, so they really only operate in one location, or only work in one kind of slender sector of the economy. So they're not as broad as we are. So our growth model, which was really what Greg started. So we talked about Greg earlier. He was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer. He wanted to help grow the mission of First Step beyond Atlanta and beyond the numbers that he was serving at the time. So businessman Greg took a page from that business book and decided to do a merger and acquisition and buy a for-profit staffing company.
He bought the infrastructure, turned it into a not-for-profit.
Correct. As soon as it's purchased, it becomes a 501c3 because that's our tax status, and was able to scale quickly under that model. I think the first one, was a learning process. Nobody had tried it before, and I haven't met a single person who's tried it since. But we were looking to see if the businesses that we had purchased that book of business from would react differently with the population we were bringing to work. And the fact of the matter is, it worked. They bought into the mission because of those wraparound services we provide, transportation, job coaching, and now in the last few years, we've added on even more resources for our clients around housing assistance and free upskilling and financial literacy.
Transportation to the work.
Yeah, we provide transportation to work. So if you cannot get there on your own, we will provide bus passes, provide Ubers, or provide a carpool rideshare that we operate in most of our cities to make sure people can show up on time every day. So I think that acquisition taught us that we could scale. So we did two more. We bought a company in Philadelphia in 2018 and one in Southern California in 2019. So the scalability of what we've been able to do makes us fairly unique because not many nonprofits are willing to kind of test the waters of for-profit processes. But we've been able to prove a model that works. And we have great employer partners who, even when we come in as a new provider, see that we have that great workforce showing up. So they keep us around and in a lot of cases give us bigger market share in those locations.
So you're working alongside other for-profit staffing agencies. What do you tend to hear from your employer partners about how you perform relative to the norm?
Well, our fill rates are much higher because we have an untapped population that they are turning away that we reconnect back to work. So I think we're able to make those fill rates, which are really important. So if you need 300 people at your warehouse, we can make sure you've got 300. We might have 310. Average staffing is usually a much lower fill rate because they don't have they're screening out people that we would screen in. So we do great at that. Retention rates tend to be much higher, so people stay at those jobs longer because we're providing all those additional services that are not normal in the for-profit staffing industry, the transportation and the housing assistance and the coaching. So because we provide that, fill rates and retention rates, we outmatch all of our for-profit competitors.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann.
And I'm George Everly Jr.
During the COVID-19 epidemic, I stumbled upon an article that Dr. George wrote, which had a real strong impact on me in terms of how COVID was and was likely to impact our social connections, our relationships. And it really, really resonated with me. So I reached out to George, basically wrote him a fan letter, and that began our relationship.
We found a mutual interest in helping people become their best selves, especially in times of adversity.
Together, we embarked on a quest to co-write Lodestar. That journey began with countless hours of researching the most impactful self-help books out there.
Once we had our picks, we combined the science with the practical.
The result of our journey, the creation of a one-stop shop for the best of the best in self-help.
We decided to write this book to help others go from where they are to where they want to be and be the best possible selves they could be.
So if you're looking to boost your career, build stronger relationships, or simply become the best version of yourself, Lodestar is here to guide you on your path. Let's delve a little bit into the for-profit / not-for-profit. You live in a not-for-profit world, which, as you mentioned, the 501c is a tax status. But of course, you would like to generate profits that you could then use as capital to do more, to go faster, to do better. Tell us about the economics of your model on a one-city basis. Is it a cash eater? Or can you get it to be the point where it's self-sustaining enough that you can not have to think of it as a capital drain on your overall fundraising efforts?
Yeah. So I will say, as my old boss said, nonprofit is a tax status, not a way to do business. And that is how we run ourselves. We are running a staffing company that happens to be a 501c3 with a mission. Our current model, we sit at about 95% earned revenue from those staffing contracts and 5% philanthropy. We are very strategic in the philanthropy that we talk about using because that is how we pay for all those extra things. That's how we cover the transportation.
The social services, the job
social
coaches.
Services. Correct. And we continue to push against that metric. I think when I first met Greg back in 2015, they were operating at a 90-10 split, 90% earned revenue, 10% philanthropy. And even as we grow, we continue to make sure that we're keeping those metrics in line. And any profit that is generated, any gross margin that comes into First Step through those staffing contracts is going right back into mission, right? All of that is feeding what we're doing.
Tell us about the philanthropy part of it. Greg was your first philanthropist. How do you raise money now? Who does it come from? What kind of programs do you use to raise it? Does it come from your employer partners sometimes?
It does. 1-800-Flowers has been part of that for us, which we're very appreciative of. But it's coming mostly from private foundations and many of the communities that we serve. And generally, these are individuals or families or foundations that care about the type of people that we are seeking to help
In their communities.
in their communities. So they're interested in homelessness, or they're interested in our justice impacted populations. They're interested in workforce and economic mobility issues and how they can improve their communities by engaging in those types of programs. So that's usually where our philanthropy comes from. We do work with some government resources.
So you go to Philadelphia in 2018. Does the city or the state of Pennsylvania bring up some dollars from their jobs programs?
They do. In fact, Philadelphia has been one of the more generous cities that we've moved into. The mayor at the time was very bought into the program.
I can't think of a better bet or a better use of their dollars.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're automatically taking what is pretty usually a drain on social resources. It's police, it's shelter beds, it's hospitals, and it's a drain. And the average, kind of stated data on this stuff is it usually costs a community about $40,000 a year to support a homeless individual. So imagine taking that person and turning them into a working taxpayer who doesn't rely on those social services anymore and now is actually contributing to the economy instead of someone who is relying on social services that are funded by taxpayers. So it is a win. Automatically, the ROI just flips it on its head as soon as that person starts working.
What do you do to get them connected? What do you do to get them banking services? What do you do to get them a mobile device?
Mobile devices are actually easier to come by these days, Jim. There's a lot of free phone programs out there that we utilize and our clients utilize so that they can get access to free phones. Now, sometimes there's a limit on data and time, but generally they are able to get a phone at some point. So that's actually become easier in the last 5 years.
Having had a wire go bad on me and my phone die prematurely running around Manhattan the other day and realizing, oh my God, I'm unplugged from the world. I can't imagine not having access to a device.
Yeah, so I would say the phones have become much easier these last few years. And in fact, the easiest way we can communicate with our clients is text messages. That is something that they generally have access to. For these other services, the financial literacy, the housing program, the free upskilling, I am all about partnerships, Jim. I mean, I do not believe in duplicating the things that already exist in these great communities. We want to be additive to what's already happening and kind of focus on what we do well, which is jobs. So we want to be a great job provider, and then we work with 200 plus nonprofits that are sending us individuals who might need work from the shelters and the local food pantries and the Department of Supervision, kind of any agency you can imagine that might be touching these populations. And then we can also use those same referral partnerships to refer back if somebody needs the services that they're not already receiving.
And that you don't provide. Yep.
Correct.
Tell me about somebody else who maybe you've kept track of, who started maybe a few years ago with you. Maybe they're in Atlanta, and tell us the impact it may have had on that individual and by further extension, their family.
We had another gentleman here in Atlanta who, and this seems to be a common theme in recent years, that they are actively homeless when they come to First Step, but part of the reason that they are homeless is because they have a criminal record.
Actively homeless. What does that mean?
So they are living on a street or in shelter. They're not in an apartment facing an eviction. They're not on the cusp, which unfortunately two people are. Like, they are sleeping in an abandoned building or in a shelter, or a few very lucky ones might have a car they're sleeping in, but that's few and far between. But unfortunately, that status has come as a result of a criminal background, right? That is the thing that is preventing them from getting a job and getting housing. So they find themselves stuck and really don't know where to turn. And we had one gentleman came to us, and this is where I think First Step's approach to jobs first, and then allowing the rate and the path to long-term success to be in the hands of our clients and not as a top-down approach, because I really believe in human agency. Like, people, no matter who they are, have a right to determine their own path and what they define as a success, and not something that we as an agency or a funding mechanism should choose for them. So this particular gentleman needed to get access to some disability resources. He needed to get access to a doctor and some mental health resources. And thankfully, we have a secondary program that connects individuals to SSI, SSDI, and VA benefits. So this gentleman, his name is Mr. Hightower, went through that program first, got to a place where he was mentally in a spot where he was capable of going out to work. And so he came back after he completed his applications and had some temporary housing, went to work. One of our long-term accounts we've been working with for about a decade, found some success, and then was able to get his own apartment. And I think when he came to us, he had been living on the streets, was suffering from mental illness, really didn't know where to turn. But because we had these stepping stones for him to be able to get into that place of stability, and then he was able to work and then self-resolve his housing issues after that, like, he's seen a tremendous amount of success from that point. And for some people, he's still working what most would consider an entry or middle level job. He is not interested, like Mr. Nick, in going to get his welding certification. He is very excited and happy with the job that he has, but he also found financial stability and a sense of purpose, and now has friends and family and all of the things that we would want around social connection. So I think, everybody's story doesn't have to end with, some high paying career in a white picket fence. Some people's version of success looks different, and we really promote that because, again, I think it's all about personal agency. Like, what is it that you want to achieve, and how can we help facilitate that?
Yeah, I think that's important for us to contextualize what success is like for different people. I remember I was with a lady who worked for us when we were in Manhattan. We were walking on West 42nd Street from a meeting we had just had, and I used to work in a home for boys, and I ran a group home. And she had asked me just a couple of days before that about, do you have any success stories? And I told her of a couple, including a fellow who, after he graduated from St. John's Home, went into the Marine Corps and became a sergeant major. It was Army. Became a sergeant major, and had a 20-plus year career in the Army. And I said he was a great success story because this kid was a terrific kid. He had tough circumstances and got himself in trouble, but had righted his life. And there, the service was a wonderful salvation for him. And so I told him a story about that one fellow. And we're walking that day, and I hear someone call me from behind, said, "Mr. Jim," which is what they used to call me in the group homes. And I turned around, and he came up and he gave me a big hug, and two men standing hugging on the sidewalk on West 42nd Street. It is not unusual at all. And I caught up with him, and at that time he was living in Co-op City, which is a big middle-income housing community in the Bronx. And he had a canvas satchel with him, and he was carrying his tools because now he's an electrician, and he was going from job to job to job. He told me he had two kids. And I thought it was appropriate that he had a bag of tools because I remembered I got him for breaking and entering. So I explained to her that success comes in all different forms. And here was a happy married man with a family, productive, with a good job. And so his definition of success was a home run with a couple of gold stars next to it. So I'm glad you contextualized that for us, and to hear how Mr. Hightower made a success out of himself. Now, you said there are other agencies that are doing good work in this world, but tell me another one that's having success.
I mean, there's some agencies. There's a group that I was actually with yesterday that solely works with individuals coming out of the criminal justice system called CEO. They're based out of New York. They are in 31 sites. They do some really great work with those individuals that are coming out of the criminal justice system and helping them navigate a path back to stable housing and stable employment. There's some place-based groups. Some of them are attached to Goodwills across the country that run a staffing enterprise. So many Goodwills have that.
And you guys all share knowledge all the time, lessons learned?
Many times.
Yeah.
We are, that world becomes smaller and smaller the longer I'm in it, Jim. So I continue to bump up against some of the people.
What city called you? Don't tell us the city, but give us an example of what they're looking at. I'm sure they all want you to come to their city, right?
They do. I would say between me and Matt, our COO, we get at least a call a week, if not multiple. And it comes from multiple sources, right? We're getting it from some of our employer partners that like what we do. They have, all the things we talked about, good fill rates, retention rates. They like the mission. They ask if we'll help work with them in another site where they might have an operation. But we also get it from folks at the mayor's office and the homeless service division and another nonprofit that believes that work is an important part of people getting back on their feet. So they'll reach out and ask what it would take to get us into their city. So I would say as an organization, we plan to keep growing. I'm trying not to, burn my staff out by adding too many cities at once and controlling that growth. But we're excited. I mean, since 2015 to today, First Step grew from being a one location agency helping about 100 people a year to now a seven state organization serving about 8,000 people a year. And I think we just have tremendous opportunity. Unfortunately, too much need. I wish we didn't need to exist, but there is a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I think there's an appetite in the employment space today to work with populations that were otherwise sidelined. So, second chance hiring and DEI initiatives and all of those things that are part of our ecosystem now are opening up some doors we didn't have before.
So whisper to me, if you would, a city wants to get into your consideration set. If they came with a pot of money from their budget, which they're otherwise not wasting, but spending without any potential to right the situation, if they were to divert some of that to you, and oh, by the way, in their city, they have a few families that are very, very philanthropic and want to come, would that help them move up on the queue if they came and said, no, we can really finance this? It's not going to be a strain on you?
Yes, financing is part of a three-pronged stool that we need. So we need jobs. We're a staffing company. So employer partners are key. We need to make sure
those philanthropists made money in business most of the time. Yeah. So they're going to have relationships in the business community, and they're going to know who needs the people.
Yes, and those warm introductions are critical, right? Like somebody to go in and validate that we're a real deal and know what we're doing is tremendous. Business is better that way anyway. So jobs. We need an ecosystem of nonprofit partners that we can lean on for people, because we want to find the people that are getting left out, and that usually comes from the nonprofit sector. And then we need community support, either in the form of private philanthropy or government support to help us get up and running in that city. And the nice thing about this model is it quickly starts to generate its own earned revenue, so it has a sustainability model that most nonprofits don't.
That's terrific. And if someone who hears this says, geez, I'm already in Philadelphia, I'm already in Atlanta, but I'd like to help, because clearly I see that there are more homeless that need this first step up. And I want to help First Step. How would they get in touch with you or Matt at First Step, Amelia?
So all of our contact information is on our website. It's firststepstaffing.com. So pretty simple.
Firststepstaffing.com.
Yes, sir. So very simple. Contact information, stories of success, kind of anything you might want to know about us, the industries we serve, the populations we're trying to reach. All of those are important about us reaching kind of the levels that we want to get to.
Well, we're so happy that I chatted with a person sitting next to me who turned out to be a very special person. And then she introduced me to Matt and to you, and I couldn't be happier. We're so proud here at 1-800-Flowers that we've met you, that we partnered with you, helping you in your mission, because you're helping us in ours. And you help tens of thousands of people get a wonderful gift last year from Harry and David, and from Cheryl's Cookies, and from Simply Chocolate, and from the Popcorn Factory, and of course 1-800-Flowers. So isn't it wonderful that you get to do well by doing good? And it is. Amelia, you and Matt and Monica are living examples of how good that can be. And so thanks for all you do. And I hope we got the word out for you a little bit today.
Thank you so much, Jim. We're so appreciative of the partnership and the chance to tell the story to a few more folks.
All right, get out there. We need another 350, maybe 450 this year.
Hey, we're ready. We've got a line out the door, Jim. We're ready to go.
All right, let's get Christmas here pretty quick.
We put our heart into everything we do. We are farmers, bakers, florists, and makers who grow and create with a passion. Made with love at every step of the way. Because at the end of the day, we know you're sending more than a gift. 1-800-Flowers, share with love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.